Okay, everybody, get assembled. Okay. Let's close that door. Thank you. Spread out, everyone. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to give you an update about the weather conditions that we are facing right now. It's very messy out there in this city, and it will be throughout this afternoon and into the evening. I really want to urge all New Yorkers to take precautions. We expect that we'll be seeing precipitation in a variety of forms for the next hours going into the evening. Right now, it is snow transitioning into a wintry mix. And depending on where you are in the city, it's different composition, but we definitely have something here that will have an impact on the evening rush hour for sure. So I want to immediately tell people to recognize that the evening rush hour will be very slippery. It's going to be slower and more difficult than usual for sure, and people should take precautions and get ready for that. Right now, what we've got is what appears to be something in the 2 to 3 inch range in terms of snow, but again, it's switching into sleet and freezing rain now and will be throughout the afternoon. With so little snow, we're at a point yet where a lot of our plows cannot go into action yet because it's just too little accumulation, but we are doing salt. We have 700 salt spreaders deployed to keep the streets as clear as possible and usable as possible. We have 1,600 plows ready. They're pre-positioned on streets all over the city. But again, they can only go into action when we get to about 2 inches of accumulation of snow, and we're not sure if we're going to see that in a lot of places. I want to say to everyone, if you drove in to work this morning, drove in the city for anything, we were obviously fortunate that the morning commute went relatively well. But again, it's going to be tough on the way home. If you have the option to not drive back but use mass transit, please do. If you're making plans right now for the day and you have the option of either staying home or using mass transit, that is far preferable. Again, we'll be very slow and messy out on the roads. I also want to note it's going to be very slippery, both for motorists but also for pedestrians. What we expect later on is a lot of ice, very slippery conditions. People really need to take that seriously, recognize it's a situation where we could see cars spinning out, we could see crashes happening very easily because of unusual conditions. For pedestrians, to also be really careful as you're walking out there. Now, for kids, obviously school is in session, but parents have been concerned, obviously, about what's happening with our school buses this morning, again, because the weather hit later than originally projected. School buses functioned very normally, in fact, very well this morning. The Department of Education had the call center open at 5 a.m. For parents calling about school buses. And DOE is working closely with NYPD, Department of Transportation, and Office of Emergency Management to make sure that we get kids home safely this afternoon. We expect that we'll be able to get everything done, but it'll be a little slower, obviously, getting kids home later on. Any parents who need information about school buses and where their kids are and the timeline can call 718-392-8855. I'm going to repeat that. Parents who need information on school buses, specifically what's happening with their child's bus, can call 718-392-8855. School will be open tomorrow. We know that for sure right now. We expect warming later on when we get to the end of the evening and going into tomorrow. Every expectation that school will be open. Want to remind people anywhere in the city, if you are confronting a problem with heat, please immediately call 311 so we can get to work on that right away. And also reporting that NYCHA Public Housing, their command center is up and running. Their war room that deals with heat issues. At this moment, we have a very limited number of outages. They will all be addressed in the course of the day. So that is a situation where they're very focused. Just want to say a few words in Spanish before turning to the Deputy Mayor. Nuestros equipos siguen trabajando duro para limpiar la nieve que ya se está convirtiendo en lluvia helada. Esperamos que afecte el tránsito esta tarde y en la noche. Si pueden, dejen sus autos y usen el transporte público. Recuerden cuidar a sus vecinos más vulnerables. Llamen al 311 si no tienen calefacción y al 911 en caso de emergencia. A reminder to everyone, please check in on your neighbors, particularly senior citizens, anyone with a health challenge that you know might need help. It's good to check in on them. If you have any kind of problem, loss of heat or any other problem, typical problem, call 311. If you see something urgent or life-threatening, call 911 right away. With that, I want to turn to Deputy Mayor for Operations Laura Anglin, thank her and her team for the work they've been doing related to the storm. Everyone was up from her team very, very early this morning to double-check to make sure that school would be opening on time and we could do that effectively. I want to thank her for all that hard work. Deputy Mayor Laura Anglin.
Thank you, sir. I just want to provide a little more detail on the weather for today and what we're expecting. We are under a winter weather advisory until midnight, per the National Weather Service. I think you've noticed roughly around between 11 and noon today, the snow started transitioning over to sleet and freezing rain, making very messy conditions. We are expecting about a half of inch of sleet accumulation and ice possibly forming this afternoon. We do expect total accumulations, as the mayor said, to range from 2 to 3 inches, probably on the lower end. And we will see the precipitation change to all rain around 6 p.m. today, which will be good, and the rain will continue to about midnight. We'll be cold all afternoon, and that's why the sleet will continue. We'll only have temperatures in the mid-20s until they rise above freezing at around 6 p.m. today. And in addition, later on today, the winds will start to kick up. We'll see likely sustained winds of 15 to 25 miles per hour with gusts of 25 to 35 miles per hour. So we'll be watching for trees and other issues. And then tomorrow it'll be warmer, but it'll still be very windy, and we may see gusts in the area of 35 to 40 miles per hour. And then it will remain dry for the rest of the week. So.
Thank you very much. All right, questions. We're going to take some questions on the weather situation, then we'll do some off-topic questions on the weather situation. Anyone? Anything related to weather? Yes, Rich.
Has the city dodged the bullet this time around?
So far, so good, Rich. I think we really were worried about the timing of the storm. According to what the National Weather Service was telling us yesterday, it was the worst possible timing. It was going to hit right as rush hour was beginning. And we've learned from previous experience that that's can be a real problem, particularly if it's a fast accumulation. But the good news is the amount that was being projected, the precipitation never really moved. It didn't jump up as we've seen in some other situations. And it slowed down. The storm slowed down and very conveniently waited till basically the rush hour was over. So, yes, I think this is a case where we dodged a bullet with the morning rush hour. We're not out of the woods. Again, I think the evening rush hour is going to be tough, but better than what we were worried about for sure. Any other questions on weather? We go once on weather, twice. Okay, well then let's get most of these good people immediately back to work. A couple of folks will stay on some other topics in case. Thank you, everyone. One more person leaving. Okay, any off topic? Yes.
The Diversity Advisory Group just released its interim report on recommendations for tackling segregation in the public school system. Wondering what your initial thoughts are on their recommendations and what the next steps are.
Well, I really appreciate the work they've done. And, we impaneled this group because we wanted to hear new ideas about how to move forward to diversify our classrooms. So I really appreciate the work they've done. I'm looking forward to reviewing their recommendations very carefully with the chancellor. But I think it's a good example of bringing in talented people who are looking to help move us forward and getting their ideas, and it's going to help us as we think about our next steps. Yes.
Mayor, you are planning a trip to New Hampshire this weekend. Can you tell us why you're going up there and if you're laying the groundwork for a run for president?
Well, I've said very clearly that I'll be going around the country talking about the things that we're doing here in New York City. I'm going to be talking about guaranteed health care for all. I'm going to be talking about our new plan to provide paid time off, paid personal time for every New Yorker who doesn't have it, and talking about what we've been able to achieve with progressive ideas here that are really helping everyday people and need to be part of the national discussion. So I've been saying to all you guys for weeks and weeks, I'm going to be doing that. I'm going up to speak at the Harvard Kennedy School on Thursday evening. I'll be in New Hampshire on Friday. I'll double back over to Albany on Saturday for the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus. But this is part of what I've been saying you should expect. Obviously, I was down at the Conference of Mayors a few weeks ago. I'll be doing this kind of thing to get a message out that I think is important to be heard at this point. Please.
Is there room for more Democratic candidates in the presidential field? It's getting pretty crowded.
Well, look, I will restate what I've said about myself. That I haven't ruled anything out, so I'm not going to speak about hypothetical situations, but I will only say on a broad note, and I said this when I was on the Bill Maher show, that I think this is a good example of democracy in action. I think we need voices from all over the spectrum of the Democratic Party to come forward. We need people with different views, different backgrounds, different parts of the country. I think it's very healthy, and I think it's a chance to sort things out. A good primary season is a chance to really debate the issues and sort things out. So from what I see so far, I think it's very healthy. Yes?
Mr. Mayor, you're not ruling out a run for presidency. Is this trip to New Hampshire going to help you make a decision about your plans? And do you expect to have any more clarity during this trip or after this trip?
I appreciate the question. Look, I'm not going to get into procedural matters. I've just made very clear I'm not ruling it out, and I've made very clear that my sense of mission is to go out and talk about these issues. I think it's a very important moment. I think something like Medicare for All, for example, is very much on the front of the minds of people all over this country. We got to talk about it. It's something that would greatly benefit New York City if it were achieved. I think the kinds of things that, for example, my wife Charlene is focused on mental health. We could do a lot more for New Yorkers on mental health if we get the kind of legislation we need in Washington. But that requires a different discussion of mental health in this country. She's going to be talking about it. I'm going to be talking about it. And I think that's got a chance to do something that could really help New Yorkers and everyone. So that's my focus. At some point, I'll have more to say about the presidential situation, but this is consistent. This trip is consistent with my vision of getting the message out. And look, obviously, if you go to one of those states, it's a chance to be heard. See, there's other things? Yes.
Mayor, there have been calls for Councilman Diaz Sr. to apologize or resign in light of his remarks. What was your reaction when you heard his comments, and what do you think should be his fate in the City Council?
I was deeply troubled by those remarks. They're inappropriate. There's no place for them. And I think the bottom line is he has a chance very quickly to apologize, to recognize that he said something very offensive and very inaccurate and very inappropriate. And that's his only chance, in my view, to continue as an effective public servant. If he's not willing to apologize, he simply shouldn't be there. Let me see if there's anything else. Rich, go ahead.
There were several council members that were calling on you to ask him directly to resign today, and you think that there's still an opportunity for him to avoid that? Is that?
I said in Albany yesterday, and I still feel it. He's got to come forward immediately and say what he did was wrong. It's not going to happen again. He recognizes the mistake, and he's willing to act differently. That's the only way I think he can salvage the situation. If he doesn't do that immediately, I think he needs to leave.
Mr. Mayor, looking at the announced presidential field, what do you think about the current candidates? Some of them have raised a lot of the issues that you're talking about, some of these more progressive issues like health care for all, and higher minimum wage. So do you think there would be room for yourself in a field like that when now you have several candidates who are already discussing some of these issues that you've talked about?
So let me just say first about just the public debate in general. I started talking about income inequality when I was public advocate. I obviously made it the centerpiece of my run for mayor, talked about the tale of two cities. I called for higher taxes on the wealthy. I remember the day, it was October 4th, 2012, in a speech before ABNY, no less, and that was to fund our pre-K initiative. I am proud of the fact that a lot of the things I've been talking about now, more and more people are talking about, and it's not because of me, but I do think the things that we've been able to do here in New York City have opened a lot of eyes. And certainly the way you change things, the way you change things in the national debate, the way you change things in the Democratic Party, is for important voices to speak up and speak up boldly, speak up loudly. That's what I'm going to do. And I think it's a cumulative impact. The more people who stand up and say it, the more chance it becomes the majority opinion. So that's my sense of mission right now, and it's something I think is good for the country and good for New York City. On the question of the field, again, I'm speaking as someone who has not ruled out a run, but is talking more about the general nature of the field. There's always room for more progressive voices. This is a party that is in evolution right now, very rapidly. It's moving in a more progressive direction. I think it's very important that that gets consolidated. I think it's the right thing to do philosophically, but I also think it's the best way for Democrats to win elections going forward. So our voters actually know who we are and what we stand for. Of course, it's a situation where more voices can and should be welcome. See if there's anything else? Yeah.
He's right that New Hampshire voters have this unprecedented power in the primary schedule, that they come so early. Is that good nationally?
I've watched this process for a long time, and this is, again, a general reflection. I'm not speaking about this year or any individual. I'm just talking generally here. I've watched it for a long time, and I have to say it's a really challenging gauntlet for candidates to run through. It is a situation that really vets candidates effectively, in my view. The first 4 states really do represent a real interesting mix of this country and bring out whole different sets of issues, different constituencies. I have to say, I think it works on many levels. And I think there's also a real focus on talking to people in a lot of these early primaries, like talking to everyday people, not just giving rallies, but hearing people. And I think that's actually very valuable. Yeah.
Mayor, in your mind, is there, we know that you haven't made up your mind about this, but is there a date by which somebody would have to get into the race formally, or if you wait too long, can't the train just pull out of the station?
I'm just going to speak generally because, again, I'm not talking about my particular situation. My statement is just very clearly I'm not ruling it out. But if you said, is there some kind of ground rule nowadays? The rule book got thrown out a long time ago. I mean, let's face it, not just with the results of the 2016 election, but you've seen a number of other situations in the last few years where what we all thought were the rules of the game when it came to political campaigns, they just don't exist anymore. So I don't think there's some magical date. I don't think there's some magical, specific thing you have to do. I think it's really about who you are, what you believe in, and what it means to the people who are doing the voting. Anything else? Going once, twice? Oh, just at the bell.
You've often described your wife, First Lady Chirlane McCray, as your most important advisor. What does she think about your presidential musings?
Grace, you know us well by now, and that's a question to ask Chirlane McCray. She speaks for herself. Look, I'm only saying this. We do everything together. That we have a shared sense of mission we have since the day we met each other in 1991. And what she has been doing to promote a different approach to mental health, not just in the city, but all over the country. I mean, she is invited constantly, not only to speak at mental health conferences around America, but to keynote them, because people in the mental health field regard her work as extraordinarily important, that it's changing the paradigm and it's changing the discussion. Obviously, she's in the biggest city in the country. She's shown that there can be real change fast on the issue of mental health. The destigmatization message is really working here. So I think she has something to say that needs to be heard all over this country. But in terms of what she feels about any theoretical situation, you'll certainly have an opportunity to ask her that. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Rich.
So back to the Reverend Diaz, if you will.
Yes.
Apparently the council has the ability to toss him from the council if they take a vote, if it goes through the Standards and Ethics Committee, if they recommend it. Do you think the council should look at that or at least talk about it if he refuses to apologize and/or resign?
Look, one, I don't know the rules. Forgive me, I'm not familiar with them. But they should use every tool they have to make the point to him that he has to apologize. It's a question of the integrity of public service, right? You can't say something about a group of people like that, people who you're supposed to serve, and expect it to be ignored. He's the chairman of a committee that is supposed to govern over work for every single one of 8.6 million people. We're supposed to be working, all of us, on a more unified city and a more respectful city. It doesn't work if you're overtly singling out a part of our community negatively. And the LGBT community has suffered a lot of discrimination over the years. And finally, there's been a growing understanding in this country that we need to respect all people. And we expect our public servants to be leaders in creating an atmosphere of respect and fighting discrimination, not fostering it. So I think the council should use all the tools at their disposal, but my hope is that he gets the message very quick that it's either apologize or just walk away, because you can't do this job if you're willing to do something divisive. Yes?
The public advocate special election is 2 weeks from
Yep.
today. Have any of the candidates sought your endorsement?
I'm not going to get into private conversations. A number of the candidates have reached out in different ways. I'm only going to say at this point, I think it's a very talented field. New Yorkers have a lot to choose from, obviously. I want to urge all New Yorkers to recognize it's an important position. You never know what might happen to someone who's public advocate. I am your poster child for that. And I think, one, everyone needs to come out and vote. We've seen a real good uptick in voting. I know it's a special election, but everyone come out and vote for the public advocate election. But right now, I have no plans to get involved. That might change, but I have no plans to. Thanks, everyone.